My name is Jeff Burkhardt. Thank you for getting this course. I look forward to showing you how to build a mandolin. Let me give you a little bit of an overview of how we're going to approach this build. We're going to start with the sides and the blocks. One way that you can thickness your sides is by using hand planes, and so I'll show you how to do that. The big thing you want when you're doing the hand plane method is a steeper angle. A low angle plane is going to catch the grain of the wood and split it. So the steeper angle you have, the better. So these are plans that I've drawn. It's based on a 1916 Gibson A0 mandolin that I've got. The blocks are located here and here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the curve that goes over the neck block here first. So that's going to go in here, like so. And what I'm going to do is mark on my side. Alright, before I glue these blocks to the sides, we probably ought to talk about glues used in luthing. I'm going to put a little more pressure on the end here. Ease up in the middle, and a little bit more pressure up here. Alright, so let's talk about kerfing. The sides that we just put together and glued to the blocks to form the rims are very thin. You don't need to have two different species joining tops and backs to sides. The theory behind these two different species is that you'll have two hardwoods. So if you're with us at this point, you have completed chapter 1, which is the rims, the sides and the blocks. We started today with our side material. Alright, so on your drawing here you have this contour map, and this is what we're going to use to determine how the top and the back is going to get carved. I'll explain this really quickly. Each line is a contour. Next thing we're going to do is jump over on the drill press, and we'll set a height of 3/16 using a similar method to how we drill out the top. But this time we'll be drilling the inside, and then we'll carve out the waist and get to graduating. This is the funnest part of building mandolins. At this point, reading the grain is going to be an important consideration. Your slope goes down, so I can always cut that way. But once I go past the midway, the curvature of the top goes this direction. So if I come into the top this way, there's a good chance I'll split it right where the arch is. Don't forget proper nourishment while you're doing this. You can work up a sweat, so highly recommend some kind of caffeinated or even just water, some kind of beverage, and keep your food diverse and tasty. Highly recommend using some sort of a sponge or some sort of a backing material on the sandpaper to smooth out any of those inconsistencies. So you'll see on your tone bar, because it crosses the concave surface at an angle, one of these sides will be higher than the other. You don't have a perfect 90-degree angle. So in order to connect these two lines, the way I do it is I use a chisel to get right down on that line, and then I hollow out the middle just a little bit to make fitting it to the top. So we're going to lay out our F-holes at this point. And what we first need to do is determine where the bridge line is going to pass through the center here. From this point where your 15th fret cross piece is, we're going to measure 5 7/8 of an inch. You can see the line is a little bit outside the hole here. I'm just going to come back with sandpaper or files to clean that up. I'm not going to try and get that with the saw. I'll just start right at the point there and work my way around on the outside first. The tap tuning method is based on what note comes out when you tap on it, and then you can change the thickness to change the note. Obviously, when you make it more thin, the tone bars or the top itself, that frequency is going to go down. One of the caveats to that with tap tuning is that, so as I'm checking the tone when I'm tapping on the top like this, there's a pinging sound, and what I'm listening for is sort of the length of the decay of that sound. You have to keep in mind, it's not just one thing. There's no silver bullet here. The triangular cross section on the treble bar here leaves it taller so it has more stiffness, but because we are removing material from the sides, we are also removing mass. So we get that better combination of less mass but more stiffness. So the theory on tone bars is that their main job is to alter the stiffness on the top so that the top will be responding to the notes that it needs to produce to make the mandolin sounds. So now that we have a flat surface back here, we can do a real test of the fit. The joint itself has enough friction to hold, which is a pretty good place to start. But we want to make sure, we want to check the 3 key axes of this neck joint. The biggest factor that you need to look at is the center line. The next concern is the pitch, and that is the angle of the neck And basically all you're looking for there is, so you might be thinking, yeah, let's just take this over to the bandsaw. Maybe it's a good time to cut it with the table saw. And frankly, no. We put a lot of work into this whole project so far. You want to be really careful. Cutting off this piece is probably the simplest procedure we're doing on the neck, but it's also the one that could end up ruining it for you. So just take it easy, be careful. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about carving maple. The process we're going to use is very similar to what we used on the top, kind of working in quarters, then working radially out from the center, then working the recurve. I changed my left-hand grip on my gouge quite a bit. When I'm doing a lot of turning or steering with it, I'll usually choke way up, and I'm actually even holding, part of the business end of it. When I'm doing the big heavy work, I can hold it back on the handle. Because on this side, I want to be coming in this direction. On this side, I want to come in that direction. So right in here, it gets real tricky trying to go with the grain. And sometimes your best move is to just do everything across the grain. It's going to be important as you graduate the back and get it down closer to that final dimension that you spend some time flexing it and feeling how it moves under pressure. I've enjoyed playing around with trying to get really, really thin recurves. And on the top especially, that led to thin sounding E and A strings. They're pretty weak. I've been using a thicker recurve on my top. On the back, in my own experience, going thinner has led to a stronger chop, a little bit more power, and stronger projection. So as far as the stiffness goes, so we're going to tap it and listen to it. I'll show you how we can hold it in different places to get different tones out of the tapping. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this main note that we're hearing is going to be lower because the feet are lowering the resonance. So what I'm going to do now is cut the back out to shape and get it ready to glue onto the rims, and then we'll check the resonance again. And so now we're going to discuss how we cut a binding channel. There's a lot of ways to do it, and depending on what you have access to, I'll show you several different methods. Binding serves several purposes. There's a visual element with your color scheme, and once that slot is cut, you'll see that I did one last final victory lap around the whole surface, going right to left. And I'm just going to check that the binding fits in that slot really well, and it does. You'll want to check in several places. One spot to really pay attention to is up here towards the neck joint, where the arching of the top will actually... We're in Chapter 7 now, which is carving the neck. Where the neck meets the fretboard, I'm going to get it really close with the rasp, but I don't want to get into the ebony with a rasp because ebony likes to break. It's pretty brittle. We're ready to start Chapter 8 now. Congratulations, you're finished building the instrument. For this chapter, what we're going to do is get the nut set, get the bridge fit, work on our action, do our fret work, and get ready for the final sand. The purpose of setting it up in the white like this, and a lot of people don't like doing this. A lot of people do like doing this. The reason I do it is some general guides for you that could be helpful are to keep it at least a 1/16 of an inch inside from the edge. The general spacing between courses is around 1/8 of an inch. You can go a little bit more, a little bit less than that. This is important because a fret with a flat top, the string will hit on the back side and not the center of it. And since we've worked so diligently to cut our fret slots and mark them out accurately, now if you do go too far filing your nut slots, you have a couple options. This is another reason to use just the 4 strings. There's much less tension on the bridge, and it's easier to turn these thumb screws. The next thing we're going to work on is the intonation. The intonation on a mandolin has very tight tolerances, although with the adjustable bridge, it's pretty easy to take care of. So what the intonation is making sure that... Oh, that's got some volume. I like it. Good, clear sounding notes. Has that brash harshness that brand new strings have. Except now that the instrument is ready to finish, we're ready to start Chapter 9, which is finishing. In order to do this chapter, I probably ought to lay out the whole idea behind finish. The main reason to have a finish on your instrument is... Keep in mind that we're only going to do this grain raising process on the maple. At this point, this needs to dry, and while that dries, we can start working the sunburst on the top. So the top looks just about how I like it. I'm going to do one more run with the amber here in the center going out. So I just showed you how to apply a hand rub sunburst onto the bare wood of a mandolin using trans tint dyes. The next step we're going to do is to seal that color in using spray shellac. So to be super clear on what I just did there with the intonation, and it's just on these strings, when I fill in the other ones I'm going to check those too. You hit the harmonic, you hit the fretted note. It's a good time to check all the frets and make sure you don't have buzzes anywhere that you shouldn't. A really nice mandolin will sound musical up here. It won't just sound like a high note. Well, congratulations if you made it this far. You should have a mandolin that plays in tune, that sounds nice up and down the fretboard, that looks nice with a good finish, and has been constructed with quality materials using quality techniques. I wish you luck in your mandolin playing future, or if you're building for other people, for their futures and your future as a builder. Thanks for joining. Until next time.